How Manchester United's defensive system halted Leicester's attack, why United's attack was so much more effective than Leicester's, and who should Ten Hag bring into the side against Arsenal. But before I get into that, I have got a special announcement from the sponsors of today's video, OneFootball, which is now the place where on a Saturday night, if you're in the UK or Ireland, you can watch one free Italian Serie A game each weekend. This weekend it's a massive game between Lazio and Napoli, which you can watch on the OneFootball app. As well as this, you can also use all the other football features that I've spoken about before with OneFootball. So if you are interested in watching European football, but just don't have anywhere to watch it, then you can go to the competition page linked in the description, and you can check out the free match that will be streamed this weekend. You can also watch highlights of all the Serie A games and near live instant clips as well whilst the games are going on, and by downloading the OneFootball app you will be helping to support the channel. So during the first half we did see Leicester controlling possession a lot more than Manchester United, I would say, with Brendan Rodgers' side using a 2-4-3-1 in possession, utilising a box shape in midfield as Tielemans and Soumaré would play as a double pivot, and James Maddison would drift infield from the right flank, creating an advanced double pivot ahead with Dewsbury Hall, with both players taking up positions in the half space as Harvey Barnes would hold his width on the left side. During Leicester's build-up phase they would try to pass out from their box, and they were able to do this somewhat, but this was more from United being content to passively hold their defensive 4-2-3-1, but instructing Rashford and the three behind him to hold high positions to allow them to immediately engage Ndidi or Evans should they try to dribble out of the ball. Bruno Fernandes sat on Soumaré and Eriksen behind him would man-to-man press Tielemans, which was Ten Hag's method of stopping Leicester dropping one of those two deep to receive the ball, turn and then play out. This would often result in United's defensive shape resembling more of a 4-1-4-1 at times, as Christian Eriksen pushed on to Tielemans alongside Fernandes and McTominay held a deeper position, slightly over to the right side to pick up Dewsbury Hall in the half space. Now because Maddison was drifting infield from the right flank, Malacia had a dilemma. Either he follows Maddison and stops him being able to be free in behind Eriksen and in front of Martinez, or he holds his position at left back, preventing James Justin from pushing forward into the space from deep, but in doing so he would give Leicester a 4v3 in midfield with Maddison the spare man. And Malacia was instructed to do the first option, to man-to-man press Maddison, and this worked out pretty effectively in the first half, as it stopped Leicester creating an overload in midfield, which would have potentially forced Eriksen to hold a deeper position, therefore giving Leicester a spare man in their build-up and potentially allowing them to play through United's press a lot easier. Even though it was potentially a risky move from Ten Hag, I think overall sticking to the man-to-man press, even if it did mean Malacia being temporarily drawn out of position, was key to United retaining a horizontally and vertically compact pressing shape and stopping spaces appearing in the system. Leicester were using a staggered midfield, similar to how Ten Hag sets up his central midfield, with Soumaré the deepest of the three, Tielemans to the right but starting slightly higher but still in front of United's midfield line, and Dewsbury Hall sitting between the lines, and what this does is that it firstly allows a degree of positional fluidity in possession, with Tielemans sometimes pulling wide and deep, trying to pull Eriksen further away from McTominay, and in doing so creating space for Maddison. However, United's defensive positioning and coordination of movement, particularly between the wide and central midfielders, meant that even if Eriksen or McTominay were pulled higher up the pitch, Sancho and Elanga would be narrow enough to position themselves in order to cut off the pass into any Leicester player in behind them, and force Leicester out wide to the fullback, from where it would be a lot easier for United to defend. And this is the key not just to a successful press, but also a successful overall defensive shape, making it horizontally and vertically compact, as this condenses the space in the centre of the pitch, making it incredibly hard for the opposition to progress the ball through the central areas, which is where Leicester are most threatening with their three most creative players, Dewsbury Hall, Maddison and Tielemans, all being positioned in that area of the pitch. I felt like Leicester's insistence on keeping possession and therefore having quite a slow tempo to their build-up actually played into United's hands and gave them more time to adjust their positioning and retain their defensive shape. However, United on the other hand seemed to prioritise moving the ball forward quickly in a vertical manner when there was a turnover, rather than simply just retaining possession, and this was where Jadon Sancho's goal would come from, and I'll analyse that in just a sec. So in possession, United were using their usual 2-4-3-1, which adjusted to a 3-3-3-1 during the build-up phase, with Diego Dalot on the right, sometimes retaining a deeper position, creating a back three, with Malacia holding a higher position on the left. The reason for this is that it forced Harvey Barnes into a dilemma, similar to the one that Malacia had defensively, which is whether to follow his man and continue to man-to-man press, or hold his position and allow Dalot space to receive the ball but cut the passing lane into Elanga or Fernandes on the right flank. For the majority of the first half, Harvey Barnes held his position, and so despite a fair bit of pressure from Leicester high up the pitch, United did seem relatively comfortable in playing out of their defensive third. Having Christian Eriksen alongside McTominay in that double pivot does allow the Dane to drop into that Regista position, which he's far more comfortable at playing than McTominay, and I do think we will continue to see him perform this role even when Casemiro comes into the side alongside him. However, United didn't try to play out from their own box as religiously as they did against Brentford or Brighton, where they did have a number of problems due to each side's aggressive press. Leicester were pressing high in a 4-1-3-2 with Dewsbury Hall alongside Vardy, leading the press on De Gea and the two centre-backs, with one of the central midfielders, Tielemans or Samare, pushing up level with Barnes and Maddison to man-to-man press United's deepest central midfielder. However, despite being fairly well structured and coordinated, I felt like Leicester weren't vertically compact enough to fully use their press as an offensive weapon, and what I mean by this is that the backline were reluctant to squeeze up the pitch, likely due to the fear of Elanga, Rashford and Sancho having the opportunity to run in behind if United were able to release them with a long pass. A legitimate fear, but this did cause two problems. Either the Leicester midfield would hold a deeper position to close off the space for Fernandes and co between the lines, but would therefore nullify their own press, allowing United to play out of the frontline press, which happened on a few occasions, or the midfielder Tielemans and Samare would squeeze onto Eriksen and McTominay, stopping United playing out through those two, but in turn creating space in behind the midfield, allowing Fernandes to drop into the space from where United had success in playing those direct vertical passes in behind Samare and Tielemans, finding Fernandes and allowing him to drive the attack forward. And the only goal of the game came from United exploiting the space in behind Leicester's midfield by playing a direct vertical pass forward, allowing United to then transition the attack quickly. Dalot has the ball in the United half, and you can see that Thomas, the left back, and the Leicester midfield line have squeezed fairly high up the pitch, and because the back line aren't doing the same, Dalot is able to play a simple pass over the pressing line, freeing Fernandes down the right side, and from here United's interplay between Fernandes, Rashford and Sancho is fluid and timed to perfection, with Fernandes's and Rashford's forward passes, and Rashford and Sancho's runs being weighted and timed perfectly, and Sancho rounds walled easily and slots the ball into the empty net. I think this goal highlights the fact that every side, regardless of if they are possession dominant in their offensive style or more counter-attacking, needs to be able to take advantage of a quick transition in attack, as moving the ball forward vertically and at pace makes it a lot easier to break through the opposition's midfield and pressing lines, therefore creating chances as the opposition's possession shape is going to be a lot wider in terms of players positioning than without the ball, and so you're able to take advantage of this increased space and get players released in behind the midfield line, as Fernandes was by Dalot for the goal. And then from here, if your front line are on the same wavelength and they have the movement and quality in front of goal, this seems like a far easier method of scoring goals compared to having to break down a 10 or 11 man defensive unit that is obviously going to be compact and have reduced spaces between the lines. I think in possession, the key for Manchester United is Christian Eriksen, as he plays the role of a regista, dropping deeper than McTominay at times, and just being a much more efficient forward passer than either McTominay or Fred, being able to play long and incisive passes to move the attack forward. But even McTominay has improved on the ball a lot over the last 2 or 3 games, and I think when he has a simple, well-defined role that doesn't demand too much of him, he can be a good industry player in midfield for Ten Hag. Another tactical innovation that we saw from Ten Hag in this game was the use of Malacia and Dalot as inverted fullbacks when in the Leicester half. Sometimes with Elanga and Sancho holding wider positions on the flanks, this would act as an invitation for Malacia or Dalot to invert into a position in the half space between the lines, offering another passing option into the final third, with McTominay and Eriksen holding deeper positions, acting as the main circulators of the ball. However, we also saw this inversion being used for defensive security as well, when Eriksen or McTominay would join the attack in the final third, trying to be a creative threat around the box. Dalot or Malacia would invert and hold almost a conventional defensive midfield position alongside the other central midfielder, meaning that if United lost the ball and Leicester looked to counter straight after the turnover, there wasn't a massive amount of space in the midfield for Leicester to exploit, with one of the double pivot vacating that position, as there would have been if Dalot or Malacia had instead pushed further forward down the flank holding wider positions. Now in the second half we did see Rodgers make a slight tactical adaptation, and that was to switch Maddison onto the left with Dewsbury Hall going to the right half space, and the reason for this was that in possession, due to Leicester struggling to progress the ball into United's half, Maddison was dropping off a lot deeper in front of the Manchester United midfield line, acting as more of a deeper lying playmaker, whilst Dewsbury Hall retained a higher position between the lines. United dealt with this fairly easily in the first half, with Christian Eriksen pushing up to press Maddison's space when needed, and McTominay holding a deeper position with Dewsbury Hall. However, by switching Maddison and Dewsbury Hall, Eriksen would now have to drop into a deeper defensive midfield position, with McTominay following Maddison higher up the pitch. With Eriksen being much more of an offensive-minded midfielder than McTominay, Rodgers was hoping that Dewsbury Hall could exploit Eriksen's lack of positional awareness and defensive abilities to exploit that right-sided half-space area. But Ten Hag, to his credit, was quick to react. I initially thought that Casemiro had to be brought on alongside McTominay, as I felt with two defensive-minded midfielders in that double pivot, either one would be more comfortable in tracking and defending Dewsbury Hall than Eriksen, and even though by bringing off Eriksen United would lose their main ball progressor from deep in possession, I felt it was a defensive move that had to be done. However, Ten Hag one-upped me, and instead he brought off Elanga and used a double pivot of Casemiro following Dewsbury Hall alongside McTominay on Maddison, with Eriksen playing centrally in front and now Fernandes playing from the right with Elanga making way, and this meant that United still had Eriksen on the pitch in central areas in possession, and so instead of sacrificing the forward passing abilities of the Dane, which I felt were crucial to United's attacking progression in the first half, Ten Hag instead sacrificed Elanga's pace and ball carrying ability, which in hindsight was a much smarter move. As in the first half, United's defensive shape in the second half was fantastic, well organised, well coordinated, and both horizontally and vertically compact. But also what I find most impressive about Ten Hag's defensive system, particularly late in the game, when United have a lead, is that he doesn't allow the side to drop off and concede space to the opposition. And what I mean by this is that we continue to see United engage Leicester high up the pitch, keeping Sancho and Elanga high alongside Fernandes behind Rashford, instead of having them drop deep alongside Eriksen and McTominay to create a 4-4-1-1 shape, which would have been a lot more conservative, covering the space between them and the fullbacks, but in doing so would have given Leicester more space wide of Fernandes and Rashford, allowing them to progress the ball out of their defensive third and their own half a lot easier, pushing United back and ultimately allowing Leicester to sustain attacks and the pressure in United's half. And this bravery out of possession does come from Ten Hag having complete confidence in the individual defending ability of the back line. Malacia, but particularly Dalot in this game, were excellent defensively, both from a positional point of view as well as in one-on-one situations, with Dalot doing incredibly well against Harvey Barnes throughout the whole match. I do still think that both players need to improve their attacking output in the final third, even though Dalot has vastly improved over the last few games. However, with Ten Hag using Sancho and Antony or Elanga as natural wingers, and the two fullbacks as deeper inverted fullbacks, I don't think this is a significant issue at the moment. Lisandro Martinez and Varane were fantastic as they were in the two previous games, with both players timing their tackles to perfection and being on point positionally, which is a massive boost to the whole defensive system. David De Gea pulled off a great save from a free kick in the second half, and due to Ten Hag being a bit more versatile with his approach and not religiously playing out from the back, going long some of the time as well, De Gea's ball playing weaknesses are nowhere near as prevalent as they were in the opening two games of the season. I think the addition of Christian Eriksen into a deeper area of the midfield has definitely made United a lot more fluid and efficient in their ball progression, because of Eriksen's quick interplay in congested areas as well as his long and incisive passing ability. Fernandes is a creative player, but not in the same way as Eriksen, and I don't think he has the ability to play as a deeper line playmaker in possession, who operates in front of the opposition's midfield line, as in general I think he takes too long on the ball, and his killer or long passes seem to have a much lower percentage of reaching their target than Eriksen's, which is why Fernandes often seems very wasteful in possession. However, he is very good in the transition, receiving the ball in behind the midfield line and moving the attack forward quickly, as he did for Sancho's goal and a number of times with direct long passes, freeing Rashford, Sancho and Ronaldo in the second half. This is why I think Fernandes is arguably more of a forward player than a midfielder, and operates more as a second striker than a playmaker. But nonetheless, another fantastic performance from Manchester United. I thought even Casemiro and Ronaldo, who came on in the second half, looked very good, And I do think Ronaldo alongside Rashford from the left, Sancho from the right and Fernandes behind would give United 4 attacking players who all link incredibly well together when the attack is transitioning quickly, and with Ronaldo in the side, United have a world-class clinical finisher that can be the difference, certainly in big games being the difference between a loss and a draw, or a draw and a win. And so against Arsenal I hope to see Casemiro come in for McTominay and Ronaldo come in for Elanga. Rashford I think is much better playing from the left, as rather than having to link the attack by dropping off and receiving the ball to feet, he can instead be the player to make the diagonal runs off of Ronaldo's deeper movement, getting into goal scoring positions himself as he did against Liverpool. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you get notified when my videos come out. Check out some of my other videos which will be linked in the description, and put your thoughts in the comment section as well.